This week on Engage the Sage.
Hi, I'm Don Saucier. Welcome to this week's episode of Engage the Sage. This week we're going to talk about that ambivalent experience about being excited and anxious to teach at the same time. Teaching is scary. Oral presentations in general are scary. And every time I'm in front of an audience, I'm nervous. It's normal to be nervous. And I'm probably not going to stop being nervous as long as I'm giving presentations and as long as I'm teaching. My being nervous doesn't mean that I'm not going to perform well. My being nervous doesn't mean that I don't deserve to be in front of that class. My being nervous is a completely normal human emotional response to an anxiety-provoking situation. And actually, if I wasn't nervous, it might mean that I'm not ready to teach. Being nervous or anxious when you walk into a class or when you go to give an oral presentation of any type is an indication that you care about your performance. This is a good thing. Now, it may be the case that some of you watching this are thinking that you don't get nervous or anxious when you walk into your class. What I would argue is it's probably the case that while you're not nervous or anxious, you're actually excited. And I don't think those things are that different. I think there's a very fine line between being nervous and anxious on one side and being excited on the other. And I think you can be nervous and anxious and excited at the same time. And we have a guest to tell you about this.
Hi, I'm Delaney Saucier. And I thought this feeling being excited and nervous at the same time should be called excite-nerv. I think it's completely normal to be excited and nervous at the same time, and it's not a bad thing. And what I try to do is focus on the excitement, not the nervousness. And I recommend that you do too.
As my daughter said, basically what's happening is you're feeling excited and nervous at the same time, the situation we refer to as excite-nerv. Now, interestingly, the way that your body responds to stressful situations, it doesn't know the difference between nervous and excited. Research on emotional experience suggests that we actually can decide the emotion that we feel in these situations. So that increased heart rate, that sweating, that little bit of trembling that we all do when we get into those anxiety-producing situations, that can be symptomatic of anxiety and nervousness. It can also be symptomatic of excitement. Excitement is a good thing. And what I would prefer to do is experience a emotion of excitement walking into the class than the experience of nervousness and anxiety. Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean I'm going to eliminate the emotional experience of nervousness and anxiety. But what I'm going to choose to do is focus on the excitement of the situation at hand. And I'm getting better and better at this. But it doesn't mean that when I walk into a class or I go to give an oral presentation that I'm not a little anxious, and I know that I'm a little anxious.
But being a little anxious is a good thing. According to the Yerkes-Dodson Law, a little bit of an anxiety is actually a good thing. If you don't feel that little anxiety, you may not care enough to actually do well. Now, if you have too much anxiety, you may be too distracted to do well. We need just enough so we can care about our performance.
A lot of times the anxiety and nervousness that we experience when we walk into a class is we're concerned about the performance that we're going to give. We're concerned that we might not be as well prepared as we would like to be. We might be concerned a student's going to ask a question we don't know the answer to. And to be honest, there have been a lot of times where students have asked questions that I don't know the answer to. But our students don't expect perfection. They don't expect us to know everything. They expect someone to come in and care about the learning and the teaching that's happening in the classroom and to do the best they can. And I'm not perfect, but I do my best in front of my classes. And I think my students appreciate that. There's a reason that you were given the opportunity to teach your classes. And that's because you're knowledgeable enough to teach the class. And it's important that you remember that. You deserve your position as the person in front of the class. When I walk into class and I think of myself as excited, I feel an approach orientation to my students. I want to be there with them. I want to teach and I want to learn with them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite that little bit of anxiety. I'm going to use that as motivation to make me care about my performance and to appreciate the privilege I have of teaching my students. When I want to be in there and when I want to teach and learn with my students, this starts that trickle-down engagement process. I get to be engaged to allow them to be engaged, to allow them to learn. But if I'm focused on my nervousness and anxiety in that class, I may have an avoidance orientation to my students. And what that means is I want to be somewhere else. I don't want to be involved in the teaching and learning that day. This may interrupt the trickle-down engagement process and may actually make it harder for you to teach and for your students to learn that day. And that may actually confirm the things that were creating the nervousness and anxiety in the first place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite that little bit of anxiety. I'm going to use that as motivation to make me care about my performance and to appreciate the privilege I have of teaching my students. So when you walk into your classroom, embrace your excite-nerve.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Engage the Sage.
Please like, subscribe, sign up for notifications, and share us on social media.
See you next time on Engage the Sage.